Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Art of Slowing Down podcast. It is your host here, Analena, and I am very delighted to be with you all for a solo episode today. I think it's almost going to be a little masterclass. So if you want to get your notepad out, I highly encourage you to do that. But good news, you can always listen to this as often as you like. So, what's the topic? The topic is all about what does human design teach us when it comes to manifestation and also when it comes to copywriting of ideas and such. And I want to give you a little bit of a backstory how this all came about. So over the years, I have noticed being an entrepreneur and a coach myself that one, I sometimes had an idea and then I opened up my social media and I heard somebody talk about exactly what I wanted to talk about or post about. And then I felt like, well, but they had the idea, so I really shouldn't because I'm stealing the idea or something like this, right? And it's really interesting. And obviously, as I have been working with so many people, I have seen this over and over again. And then at some point, I learned more about human design, obviously. And there's this one gate called Gate of Ideas, it's gate 11. I have this personally defined in both of my tropical and my true sidereal chart, I think twice, conscious and unconsciously. And I even remember before I even got into being an entrepreneur and coaching, I sometimes said, well, I would like to be an ideas coach. I have so many ideas. There's no way in the world I can implement all of them myself. So when I learned about this energy, I felt a sense of relief because it also made me realize that we all receive ideas and most likely also a lot of the same ideas. And there are a couple of books I want to actually weave into this. So the first book, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, she actually in the book, she talks about at some point how she had this idea to write a book and then she didn't do it. And then shortly after, or maybe years later, she saw a book in a bookstore, which was exactly about the idea she had. And she was like, well, damn, somebody else got the idea. So she kind of made this point like, okay, if I don't take action on me having an idea, well, somebody else will get the idea. So what does this mean also in the context of manifestation? Basically, this means first that nobody owns ideas, right? We're so easy to say like, oh, it was my idea, and you have to ask me permission if you want to share this. And this is also where the whole copywriting comes into play, right? And I have to also say that I have never been a fan of copywriting. It just feels contracting to me. It actually feels limiting to me, and it feels it comes from a scarcity place. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while. Right now, let's focus on the ideas itself. So, with the example from the book Big Magic, it basically made me realize that first, we don't own ideas. So just because I got an idea doesn't mean I own it. It's more so that there is this infinite field of possibilities, right? Or the quantum field of possibilities, where there are new ideas that life, consciousness, God, source, universe, however you want to call this, wants to bring into the world, right? So that the world can evolve, that we can improve, that we can up level our consciousness, we can live better, most fulfilled, and healthier lives. And the way that these ideas come into form through writing a book, through a podcast episode like this, or many other forms, is that we need to be open to receive. And this is now all about also the topic of slowing down, right? If I'm just operating from my mind, what I think I have to do to be successful or whatever, if you know me by now, I'm very much more about like, this is also now in terms of manifestation. Okay, I may have an idea, but I lean back and I want to make sure the idea didn't come from, my ego or from trying to figure out something, but it's more an idea that just dropped into my consciousness while I was taking a shower, while I was going for a walk, while I wasn't really actively looking for an idea, so to say. I have noticed that those kind of ideas, they're literally like the universe like drops them And when I'm open to it, it's when I'm more relaxed, when I'm not mentally overthinking, when I'm in a receiving state, then I'm receptive for these ideas. And again, that does not mean that I am the creator of the idea or that I own the idea. I am the vessel to channel this idea into the world. And it's very likely that not just me and Alina had this idea dropped into my realm of consciousness. So now I'm going to bring in another book. This is another book I picked up last week. It's called Intuitive Intelligence by Paul O'Brien. And he also talks about this concept in his book. And he even mentions how the light bulb was invented. Back in the day, actually, I think there were 10 different people. They all invented the light bulb. And there was a lot of discrepancy going on around, okay, who is the owner and the copyright and the patent and all this kind of stuff, right? Because not just one person had received the insights to create light bulbs in this world. And apparently, they have done a little bit of research that this happens all the time, everywhere, right? Where not just one person receives an insight about something. And even with these systems like human design, there's one person that may have had the most courage to bring these things out into the world. And as we know, this was Ra. But I have also learned from many other resources that there have been other people that have been receiving very similar information and downloads, how we call them, and ideas, and put this into the world, right? And I think the big thing here is really that we don't say it was me, right? Because it's very ego driven in some way. It's more so that, okay, I allowed myself to receive this idea. And then also, in a way, it's my responsibility to put this idea now out into the world. And I also love how in this book, Intuitive Intelligence, he talks about how, it's infinite intelligence. That's how he calls this, like quantum field of unlimited possibilities, like how I like to call it. And it's like the cloud, right? The World Wide Web, where there's all this information now from the divine, like new stuff that our human mind hasn't even comprehended yet. And it drops these ideas. And then several people pick it up. And, then you may think, oh my God, I had this groundbreaking idea. And literally you write a book about it, and then you may realize that on the other side of the world another person wrote a very similar book about it. And this is not because the person copied you or stole the idea. And of course, in today's day and age, this is also happening, where sometimes people steal courses and they sell them as their own, and obviously that's super unethical. But I think you get the idea of what I'm talking here about. And I'm sharing this with you because I also want to encourage you that, you know, that once an idea is out into the world, for me at least, I think it's totally okay to share this with others. So if one person had an idea and they created something new, and you love what they created and it finds this deep resonance, and now you're responding to this, right? That's also what human design has taught me so much. Okay, when my body is buzzing, when my body is responding, there's something there, right? Just like I'm sharing with you the books that I picked up. I had these ideas myself. I have been talking about it. And now I find this confirmation in other books where people are like, they're speaking to my soul, they're speaking my language. It's like, yes, exactly. And neither one of us owns this, but there are people that already had the courage to put this in books and put this out into the world, right? So even that I now talk about this does not mean that now you cannot talk about it because Analena already talked about it. That's actually very limiting. And that's kind of where the scarcity thinking, I think, is coming in. Because what is an idea good if it stops somewhere because people think, oh, this person owns this idea, now I cannot share it anymore, right? Because obviously, if this is something that the universe dropped into our realm of consciousness, it probably wants to go far and wide, you know? And I want to now bring in the first gene key here because I think it's highly relevant. So let's say you have been in this kind of thinking pattern that you always have to come up with something new. Also, especially if you're an entrepreneur or you're a coach. And I was in this space for a long time myself that I felt like I have to create something completely unique and new, something that has never been there before. And it put a lot of pressure on me. And then when I learned about human design more, also my astrology, I started to learn that a lot of what's in my chart is about sharing information, like kind of information that's already there. I was like, oh, really interesting, because I have always heard like, don't just share information and stuff like that. But what I realized at some point is that when I take some information, just like human design, like I didn't invent human design, obviously, and I was not the person that received the download to channel it into the world. However, my body really responded very strongly to human design, to the information that luckily many other people had the courage to continue sharing with the world. And the thing is, even though it's not original, like I didn't invent human design, I am creating it in my own Analena way. So this is now where the gift of freshness from the first gene key comes into play. And Richard Rudd talks about it in the first gene key. It's like, it's not about constantly creating something new. It's about creating something fresh, right? So even the gene keys are based on the Chinese I Ching, also highly influenced by Richard Rudd's experiences with human design. But then also he had his very own enlightened moment, or I think several days he even talks about it, where he received all these transmissions for the gene keys, you know? But it started with taking in information that was already there and being with that, and then noticing how maybe some things for Richard Rudd, I think they felt off, they didn't feel right anymore, and they served its purpose for him. And then he just had to follow his insights and intuitive guidance with that. So he created something completely fresh. And what I love also with the gene keys, I don't know if you have noticed this, but there is no copywriting anywhere. For me, that's a very expansive, abundant energy, right? Because anytime where we're like, okay, now you have to ask for permission to share this knowledge, it just puts a little bit of a bad aftertaste in it for me. And I've had some of this experience on my coaching journey with people were very eager about copywriting, and this is their work and it has to be protected. And it went so far as telling me I have to ask for permission to share this, even though I got certified with certain things. And I have to share that. For me, this led to, okay, you know what? This feels very contracting. This doesn't feel right. I may not even share it as much as I would have if there wouldn't have been this limiting copywriting thing going on, right? That's one of the things I really love so much, the gene keys. It's so expansive, right? Because it's really, you can sense they truly care that this knowledge goes as far and wide into the world as it can. Then there's also recently, I have noticed another coach that I really admire how authentic his work is. His name is George Kao. I totally invite you to check him out. He also has a beautiful YouTube channel. And he has shared that I think for the last 10 years, he did a whole YouTube video about it, that he has been practicing, I think, the art of uncopywriting. It's like in the very beginning when he became a coach, it was also this, like, you have to copyright, right? And it felt off for him. It felt contracting for him. And he now literally, whatever he teaches, even in his courses, he says that, you can take all the content, you can even teach the exact same course in class, and you don't have to mention me at all. Like, he gives you that freedom. And obviously, right, I have to say, like, even if I were to do this, I would probably mention and give him credit. I think it's really about trusting yourself when you know it's time to give credit to somebody or where you have gotten the inspiration from, right? And again, it was one of these moments where I was like, oh my gosh, yes, you're speaking to my soul, you're speaking to my heart's inner knowing what feels actually right for me as well, you know? So this is as inspiration for you that, when you have an idea and you see it somewhere else, don't hold back. If you feel in your heart you want to share where you got the idea from, then by all means do that. But see it more as a confirmation that, because this is also what human design teaches us. Like, we have an idea, and if it keeps showing up, it's like this, like there's something there for you, right? Just like for me, I have been actually talking about this thing with the copywriting for a while, and that I feel like it's just off for me. And now I've seen other people talk more about it. And in a way, it was a reflection for me like, wow, I could have talked more about it actually, right? But somehow I held back. And also that it's that confirmation for me that there's something there for me to also get this idea more out into the world with that, right? So also with that, yes, some people, because that's how it's meant to be, they have these really original, groundbreaking ideas. While again, some other people on this planet may at the same time, and we don't even know, also have the same idea, right? But there's great value in repurposing ideas that are already there and sharing information and sharing content. And that's how some people create businesses in the world. So I really don't think there's anything wrong with that, because you want to also keep in mind, in a way, like let's say somebody brought something into the world, or they created something very unique and you love it and you respond so strongly to that through whatever your authority is in your body, and you feel like, oh no, but I have to create something unique myself, or something completely new that has never been there. One, even if you think it's completely new, there may be a gazillion of other people out there that are, again, having the same idea, right? But it's also, in my opinion, totally okay that you share what they have created because you love it. And obviously, I would share their name, I would share their social media handle, account, or YouTube channel, because by me sharing that, it also opens up the possibility that some people that are meant for this person to work with them, or to consume some of their content for some inspiration, through me sharing this, I am expanding this information into the world, and I'm making it accessible for more people. So in a way, when I share information that really resonates with me, where I also give credit in a way that feels right to me, I'm doing free marketing for them in some way. Right. And I also think this is how amazing collaborations can come about. I mean, this is also what my entire podcast is about. It's all about, we keep sharing information and our knowledge and our insights, and I get inspired and I respond to it. And again, nobody really owns this. Right. So the other thing now that has a lot to do with this is this concept of, okay, how do we manifest through what human design teaches and also what the gene keys teach us? And it has a lot to do now with this idea. So for me, the old way of manifestation is all about, okay, what's gonna be the most successful? What do I want? It all comes from the mind, right? And yeah, you may have ideas here and there, but oftentimes these are more mind-based ideas, right? And then you're like, okay, now you have to take the actions to make this happen. Oh, for example, when people often talk about money, it's like, okay, I want to make $1 million, and then they go for it. And some people have been successful with that, right? But often I think they also then realize that that's not really what brings them happiness. And for me, I like to call this conscious manifestation. And really, human design has taught me this, is that, again, the mind is just here to be open to receive. It's to ask questions, to be curious. And when I am in this state, I let life show me what is actually meant for me. My mind may not be able to comprehend what that is, right? And then some of these ideas that drop effortlessly into my consciousness. Again, there's a difference between putting ideas out into the world from like trying hard and putting a lot of effort into it. And then the type of ideas where something just drops into your consciousness. And then I also have learned that because so many of the ideas that come my way, and I can tell you I have a lot all the time, that not all these ideas are necessarily for me to implement. Some are just for me to share with others so that they can implement them. That's also something I have really learned from this Gate 11. And brought me also a lot of relief because sometimes I was like, there's no way I can make all these ideas happen. And the idea that is actually mine to pursue and manifest into the 3D world, into form, this is usually the ideas that first drop into my consciousness. And then I wait, I lean back, and I let life show me that, okay, there's this nudge everywhere for me to launch a podcast, for example, when that happened like over 2.5 years ago. At first there was an idea or I saw it somewhere, my body responded, but I didn't jump into it right away. But then all the synchronicities that were showing up everywhere, it's almost like life's orchestrated to support me to put this podcast out into the world. Right. And now I'm actually going to bring in this topic of launching a podcast because I also, as you may know, I have launched a course called the Easy Podcast Launch. And I'm actually right now in the process of relaunching it again at the beginning of August 8th. And I already had a couple of people on social media that shared with me when I first talked about it. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I have been playing with this idea of launching a podcast and then all these synchronicities. And now your post pops up first in my feed. These are those kind of things I truly believe and trust because so this is what synchronicity is about. And this is how I really believe you manifest in the most powerful way. And this book here, also Intuitive Intelligence, talks a lot about synchronicities, how Young put it out into the world. It's beautiful, beautiful book. And so let's go there. I had the idea, right, to first create a podcast. And then later on, 2.5 years later, I got the pull. At first, I had an idea to actually launch a podcast. This was actually, I think, a year and a half ago. And I created a little bit of videos. I was going to make it like a self-study course, but then I didn't feel right. I stopped doing it. So I waited. I let it be. I didn't like jump all into the idea and I didn't force myself into launching the program because something didn't feel right in terms of timing yet. So I waited. And then about a year later, which was fall of last year, 2023, it was finally this nudge. Okay, it's time to really launch this podcast. And I had also people kept asking me, hey, Analena, can you help me launch a podcast? And I helped a couple of people with one-on-one sessions to actually launch their own podcast. And it just felt so fun and so easy to me, right? And then eventually, finally, as I kept going with the flow of right timing and following my bliss and all of that good stuff, I launched the Easy Podcast launch course very successfully at the beginning of January 2024. And it has been an incredible course, probably the most fun I have ever had, and also very successful. There were now many podcasts that are out into the world. I mean, I had Rachel on here just last week sharing about her Magic Mindfulness podcast, and then many others. And it was the first time where I realized that, wow, because I trusted this idea, and then the universe literally orchestrated everything in my favor to make this happen because it was meant to be. I didn't force it from my mind because some coach told me, oh, in 2024, you have to launch this kind of course to make a lot of money. But if it didn't light me up, it's not going to be good for anything, right? So I followed my bliss. I followed my joy with that. And again, all these signs kept showing up. And a lot of the people also that joined the first round of the Easy Podcast launch, they shared with me how it also was a synchronicity for them. Where they're like, oh my God, I had been waiting for a year to launch a podcast and I got stuck in procrastination. I got so overwhelmed. I kept holding myself back, right? And then, oh my gosh, thankfully, your course showed up, which now made it possible for the person to actually launch their podcast. And so we are all together, right? Through trusting ourselves through taking these courageous actions, we are all connected in this big field of synchronicities where life brings us together in the way that it's meant to be, right? And to me, that's really how I manifest the most success for myself and my business, because this kind of success, it really feels effortless, it feels very blissful, it feels very joyful. And it also brings in the right kind of people. And in the Gene Keys, we call this our soul fractal, that are meant to work with me or that are meant to work with you in this capacity. If this is one person, if this is 25 people, this is also beyond my, you know, manifestation powers, because I have never been a big fan of pick how many people you need to sign up for your course, because I think very, very easily this comes from an ego place where we feel like we need to make X amount of money. But when I can surrender more into trusting that the right people that are meant to be working with me in this course, they will find me, they will sign up for the course, and will be a most beautiful and successful experience for everyone involved, right? From that place, I have been able to manifest so much better. And this is what I like to call conscious manifestation. And I think that's another thing. So I think Eckhart Tolle, I saw then after I was talking about it, it's like, oh, Eckhart Tolle also talks about conscious manifestation. And that was part of me was like, oh, I shouldn't call it conscious manifestation now because Eckhart Tolle has a course about conscious manifestation. I have never taken this course, but knowing Eckhart Tolle a little bit and what she teaches, it's probably very similar energy about allowing life to show you what is meant for you and then taking those steps to manifest what is aligned for you and where all the synchronicities can also support you, versus ego manifestation is this place where, we always have this pressure, like figure out what you want and go after it and make it happen. And a lot of hustle and grind goes into that, right? So this is really such a beautiful concept to me, and also how this both ties together, right? The ideas and sharing information, and then how we can manifest in the most effortless way. And also what I find very, very fascinating is that this concept of manifestation, with the synchronicities and with the right timing, just like I was sharing with my podcast course, like, yeah, I had the idea a while ago, but it wasn't the right time, you know? And because I allowed myself to surrender to the synchronicities of life, it became this effortless dance in some way. And in this book, Intuitive Intelligence, he also talks a lot about the concept of, right timing and manifesting through the support of the synchronicities that are all around us. And I hope this inspires you as well, because I think in today's world, especially in the self-development and the coaching space, we still have a lot of this old ego-based thinking where it's like, oh, figure out what you want and go after it. And I want to add here that I have times where I do know what I want, but it never comes from a place where I have to force myself to know what I want. You see what I mean? It's more from like, it's just there. It comes from my heart. It's like, oh yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. And sometimes I have no idea how can ever manifest this, but then over time, as I allow myself to be with this vision, a big dream, it starts to slowly manifest. And then all of a sudden I find the right kind of people. And it's just such a beautiful synchronistic dance for me. And I also want to share with you, actually, one more time mentioning the book Intuitive Intelligence. So I wasn't looking for this book at all. What happened is I have been working on creating some more practical descriptions of the gene key so people can really more easily understand it and apply it really in their lives. And with that, obviously, the I Ching is something that's highly correlated to the gene keys. And somehow I was looking up something on Google and I found this website, which was a person like this, Paul O'Brien, and it was about the I Ching. And so back in the day, before we even had the internet, he got very intrigued with the Chinese I Ching and how powerful it was for decision making through pulling cards. And he also had a big passion for technology and computer programming and all these kind of things. So he actually created a software to bring together the I Ching on an app. And actually, I can look up for you guys what the app is called. It's pretty fantastic. It's called the Visionary I Ching. It's an app you can download on your smartphone, and you can literally use it for any topic you have in your life. And you can, through like throwing the coin, the I Ching coin, in the app, it gives you two cards for the present and the future. And I have already played with it a little bit, and it was very spot on. So I'm going to continue using it. And this is also why I'm sharing this with you, because I think it could bring huge value to you as well. So I just felt that there's something there with this book, and that's about the I Ching, which I absolutely love, right? These 64 archetypal energies is really one of my passion projects, and about technology. And he has created actually a very successful astrology website that at some point he sold. And I got the book, and I have to admit, most books I don't finish reading them. I probably have more books on my shelf that I have only half read than anything else. But this book is a very special one where I'm like, oh my gosh, everything that I've read so far, and I'm probably a quarter in so far, like I can't put it down. And it's so deeply speaking to my soul. So I really felt like this book came into my life because I was meant to read it. And I don't know what else may be there for the future, but I find that it's very, very special, you know? So it's a very different energy than if I'm like, oh my God, I have to figure something out, and I'm ordering a book, right? Because I think I need this, or I need to solve a problem with something. But this just came. I wasn't even looking for it. So that's always how things manifest in the most beautiful way for me. And I think it's kind of the futuristic way of manifestation. But I know so many of you beautiful humans that are listening to the Art of Slowing Down podcast, you probably have very, very similar experiences with that. And if you do, I would absolutely love to hear your experiences. And before we finish this episode, I just want to mention again that right now the waitlist is open for the Easy Podcast launch. So we start on August 8th. And if you get on the wait list, you will also get some little token of gratitude for being on the wait list when if you do decide to sign up for the Easy Podcast launch, like a little waitlist treat. I'm going to reveal what that is only to those people that are going to be on the wait list. Little surprise there. And I want to thank you for being here with me today. And as always, I'm very excited to be with you all on the next episode.